Everyone, I Chandan on behalf of NEN and Vadmani Foundation would like to invite you all for this webinar and also introduce our expert. Dr. Ashwin Naik is the founder CEO of Vaatsalya Healthcare, an award-winning social enterprise focused on building a network of hospitals in Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns in India. Dr. Ashwin is a TED India Fellow and also an Ashoka Fellow. He has been selected as one of the Young Global Leaders YGL for 2012 by World Economic Forum, which was announced in Geneva, Switzerland on 6th March 2012. Before I hand over the floor to Dr. Ashwin, here are a few reminders for the audience. You will be all unmute. You may ask questions by typing in panel provided. Over to you, Dr. Ashwin.
Thank you, Chandan. Today I was asked to speak about 5 things I wish I knew before starting up. So I've tried to sort of focus on the key things that I wish I had known. Put this in context, we started about 7 years ago, and this is my first company, so to say, which I have started, but I worked in startups earlier, but for some reason I had not picked up all the finer points. So let me start with the beginning. So I think when we look at the starting phase of a company, I think there is a lot of focus on ideas. There is this excitement of starting up, there are multiple ideas coming from various sides, and there is a risk of losing ourselves in the idea stage itself. And one of the things that I learned after about 1.5 years is that execution is more important than the idea itself. And in our case, we were looking at doing multiple things in the beginning. So we were saying we will set up hospitals, we will do consulting, we will do training, and all sorts of things which were related to hospitals, but not necessarily the same business. Very quickly we realized that we were not able to focus and do justice to any of these ideas, so we picked the one that we thought we will have the biggest impact, also which made sense from a business perspective, and sort of decided that this is going to be the idea on which we will focus and execute. So I think that would be my first learning, specifically to focus on execution rather than the idea. The second part that I would talk about is when we look at starting a company, most of the time the big challenge is around fundraising, and this is particularly true if you are raising multiple rounds of funding. When we had raised our first round of financing, I thought that okay, now that we have raised money, it's going to be much easier the next round, and all that. So we have raised 4 rounds of money till now, and every time I'm always amazed how much more time it takes to raise money. So the second learning I would say which I've had is that it takes much longer than expected to raise money. In many cases it takes upwards of a year to raise money, and I think that is a huge that has a huge impact on how you plan your finances. So this is something that I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years. Once we got the money and we started thinking about putting together a team, build the business, business up, and we were adding new hospitals, adding new team members. But one of the things that we didn't anticipate is as the business grows, there will always be ups and downs. And not that because the organization is growing, things will stabilize. There will always go up and down. And this is especially true with respect to what stage of the growth the company is at. So one of the things that I have learned over this time is that the the business plan and the reality will not necessarily match, and the reality will have multiple ups and downs, while the business plan on your Excel sheet will show a very rosy picture. And clearly during this period, I think what keeps all of us going is essentially to focus on what is the purpose. What is the purpose of this organization? What is our purpose in this organization? And what are our belief systems? How do we know that we are on the right track? What are the rhythms that we use, in terms of how do we meet as a team? How do we make decisions? And many a times it's luck. I think we underestimate the opportunity, the importance of luck, and in many cases it is the role of luck which is important, which plays a very important role in making sure that you're matching your business plan. The next thing I think is once you have had the fundraise, you have sort of built the business. The next stage of growth also requires you to build a larger team, and one of the key learnings that I have had this in this period is that one of the most critical aspects of your journey in an organization would be to identify and recruit the right team. And by that I have two clarifications. One is right team in terms of people who can get things done, and right team in terms of your cultural fit. As you can see from this graphic, there is a huge difference between a good hire and a hire who is not fit either culturally or in terms of set. And this will really damage the culture, the spirit of the company, particularly if the hire happens to be on a fairly senior position. So I think one of the things we did wrong and sort of created a lot of trouble for ourselves was to, in the hurry of getting things done, recruit people fairly quickly without doing the diligence and also engaging with the team members, potential team members. So one of the things that we do now is, before we are recruiting, we spend a good amount of time, maybe a couple of months, engaging with the candidates, talking with the candidates, getting to know them, sharing with them our company culture, and make sure we are bringing the right type of team. And let's also admit this is a tough job, and we continue to make mistakes, but I think at least we have eyes on in terms of what kind of systems and processes have we bring people into the organization. So that's on the team building and recruiting front. I think that employees and an ambulance driver hospitals had taken that certificate that we given him a year ago and spent 70 rupees of his own money to frame his house. I realize that it might be a small thing for us. For him, this is a mission of his work and his contribution. But I think having a recognition program, whether it's a employee of the month or whether it's a employee hotline where people can speak to you and give ideas, improve the organization, or just finding a way to reach out to senior management is actually valuable. The other thing we also realized, and I didn't know earlier, was the importance of having rituals. Whether you have a monthly meeting where all your key will come in, or you have a Monday morning meeting schedule or daily stand-up meeting, whatever the ritual is, whether it's meeting which happens weekly, that ritual is very important to for create bonding. You know, in the in the day-to-day rigor of doing things, we might get consumed by a lot of activities. But I think it's very important to have this kind of synchronization very frequent, even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So in our organization now we have various that we use. For example, we have something called the ops call. The 4 o'clock on an alternate day, all the key business leaders come there and we just discuss if there are any issues which happened in the last 2 days. This is a 10-minute call. It allows us to connect with everybody in the organization. We have a Monday afternoon leadership meeting. Everybody comes in about key initiatives that have happened in the organization and where we are making progress. We also have a monthly review. We have a sort of a half a day employee of the month program which happens in the Bangalore office. And similarly at each hospital at the last day of the month there is an employee of the month program. So these kind of rituals not only build culture but also are an opportunity to share updates, you know, what is happening with the organization, what is going well, what is not going well, and really creates the bonding that is required in the organization. So so I think that rituals and recognitions are very critical as we scale up. And more importantly, I think every day, if people in your organization are not being recognized or appreciated, I think that's going to send a wrong message. Many times, you know, we spend a lot of time criticizing people, but not enough appreciation. I think appreciating big and small things are something that have a critical role in building the organization. And in addition to that, you know, obviously gifts and small token of appreciation is also welcome. So these are some of the things that I have learned around the last ups and downs will continue forever. So you should for it. Good hiring practices critical for us so that you bring in the right kind of people into the organization, and rituals and recognition on a weekly, monthly, daily basis are very important and should not be sort of ignored as something which is good to have. It is actually must to have in any organization. So with that, I will stop and I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.
We'll start with our question and Q&A session. Our first question is from Jitendra Gupta. He asked how to manage working capital in fashion clothes business. I'm running a boutique in Bilaspur.
20% of that discount at 6,500, and we will not pay for their gear.
Dr. Ashwin?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The first question is from Mr. Jitendra Gupta. He asks how to manage working capital in fashion clothes business.
Yeah, I think that's a specific issue that all businesses with, whether it is fashion or otherwise, and clearly the management is a piece of how you run your day-to-day operations. I think there are systems and controls that you need to build in. Specifically, if you have a long receivables type of business, and ensure that your finance team puts in a good framework to make sure that the receivables are tracked and gotten at the right time. And most importantly, I think it's a fundamental system that you need to put in place, particularly in businesses which are largely dependent on free cash flows. So I think I'm not expert on the specific industry, but I think in general for any organization it's important to have a very good grip on the working capital requirements.
Okay, our next question is from Mr. Raman. He asked, my question is to how to recruit people at very early stage of starting a venture, because at that time you don't have much funds to spend. Kindly advise.
I think that's a great question. One of the challenges that you will face when you are starting up is going to be recruitment, and precisely for the reason you mentioned. And one is you don't have the money to attract talent and compensate them fairly. There is a risk associated with a early stage company, so people are hesitant to join these companies. So I think the initial few recruits are largely going to be dependent on your pitch. At that point you are not selling the company, but you are selling yourself and telling them that this is what I am going to do, and can you join us. The type of people who will join you in the early stages are quite different from the type of people who will come in later. I think the type of people who will come in the early stages are people who are very comfortable, or at least reasonably comfortable with taking some risk, and they understand that you might not have the funds to pay them. But I think it's important to build in some kind of long-term incentive, whether it is stock option or some kind of and so that they can so that's on the structure point of view. Today, if you want to recruit people at a startup level, I think it's become much more easier compared to 5 years ago. And I recently heard of the startup fair, which was organized in Bangalore, and I believe in other cities as well, where people came looking for jobs equal, and any gatherings where there are a lot of startups coming together, whether it is STI or any of the other events, there are many people who have sort of decided that they will be interested in joining startups. The key is to identify who are these people. That is that I would say is one way to do it. The other way to do it is also build your personal network. Even before you start or when you're starting off the company, make sure that your personal network is well established and you have built a reasonable group of connections. And in this, I would highly recommend that LinkedIn can be used very effectively. There is a lot of opportunities to connect with fairly senior people and even people who are interested in joining at a startup stage.
Our next question is from Ashutosh. What are the legal issues we should know before we start up?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer in a short time frame. But what I would recommend, and it is critical that you do that at the stage of I think it's very important. Good company secretary who can guide you through the entire process of incorporation, and also making sure that your documentation is in order. Plus, many of these company secretary folks can also give you some amount of advice on if there are legal issues specifically related to your business, in which case you should identify a good legal counsel. So this is a highly technical question, and my recommendation is that make sure that you have a good team of a company secretary and some amount of legal help to make sure that you are not bypassing or overseeing any of the legal requirements that might be there.
Akhil, how important is a founder's background at any stage of startup, be it raising funds or team hiring?
I'm sorry, how important is the
Founder's background.
founder's background?
Yeah, for raising fund or team hiring or etc. to run the business. How important does it play?
Yeah, my assessment in India is that there is a lot of emphasis put on the founder's background in terms of the educational qualification, where they have worked before, what kind of experience they have, etc. But at the same time, I know a lot of companies which are successful and were started by people who did not have any work experience or did not go to any of the Ivy League colleges or IIT or IIM. So my suggestion to you is do not worry about the background of the founder, but most important is to be the expert in your field or the field that you have chosen to start the company in. I think it's important to show that you understand that business much better than anybody else from a technical perspective at least, if not from all the angles. You don't have to be an expert in finance, you don't have to be an expert in HR, but at least the core business that you are in, you have reasonable amount of expertise there. The second thing that I think you should look at is even at the early stage, you can tap into some resource who can either help you on the recruiting side or on the finance side, even if it is part-time, and make sure that you are taking some help to put together your plans. But most importantly, I think for fundraising and for recruiting, I think it's the passion that you convey either to an investor or to a potential hire is what is important rather than your background.
Our next question is from Asfaq. He asks, if you have to summarize top 3 challenges and recommendations for startup before the starting the organization, that is pre-venture stage, what would they be?
So before the venture starts, there is no challenge. Actually, the challenges will start only after the organization is started. And I think, you know, in the very early stages, I think it's just proving your concept would be the number one thing I would focus on. Even if it is a small level, can you show that this is a product or a service which will be used by a small number of customers, and in some way they will show that they have used it. I think the second big challenge would be to figure out how will you money, even if you have customers, are they willing to pay you for that service? And the third big challenge at the idea stage may be to figure out if you have customers, if they're willing to pay, is this a large enough market that you can build a company around? So I would say these are the 3 things which you might want to think about, but I think the real challenges start after you after you start the company, not before that.
Our next question is from Nikhil. He asks, do you think MBA or some kind of entrepreneurial education is necessary to scale up the business?
I personally, my opinion is that you don't need an MBA or a specialized opinion, specialized education. But I think if you have an MBA, it helps you to sort of put the framework, use the framework, or use your learnings in a maybe a better way. But I think some of the challenges that you will face while you are scaling up an organization are not necessarily things that are taught in business schools or any kind of formal education. I think the one advantage that you can have is if you have worked with a startup which has scaled, that education might be very useful when you are scaling your company yourself. The other thing that MBAs really help with are building your network, because everybody who comes into that MBA program would have either started something on their own, or they would have worked at a large company, or will have networks that are useful to you when you want to either reach out to customers or investors, or sort of bounce off strategy, etc. But really, to scale your business, I think you will have to sort of focus and learn it on your own. So any kind of formal education might not necessarily be relevant for that.
Our next question is from Rajesh. For cloud-based healthcare delivery model, what is the acceptance rate among doctor community and consumer in rural and suburban urban locations? Will this be going to be changed in near future?
I think there are two parts of the question. One is if you're looking at there are two parts that you can look at. One is the cloud-based healthcare delivery itself, which falls into the realm of telemedicine or virtual consultation, and then there is the cloud-based information technology tools for healthcare organizations. My answer to you would be the first part is very difficult. I think the ecosystem has not yet evolved where there is a large opportunity to provide service over the internet or over the cloud to remote areas. I think there are social issues, there are economic issues, there are technology issues, multiple issues, and both on the doctor side, on the consumer side, where that has not yet picked up. On the other hand, in terms of managing your systems and processes on the cloud for healthcare organizations, that is no longer a challenge. I think a lot of hospitals in India and most other countries have realized the potential of using cloud-based technologies and really focusing on leveraging them. For example, in our company, we have every tool that we have, including our hospital information system, government system, everything is on the cloud, supported by a third-party service provider. So I think that part of this is probably more attractive right now, and my assessment is to split the 3 years before consumer-directed health can move to
Mr. Pratik, how to deal with a nagging customer who has been misled by a competitor against me?
That's an interesting question. To deal with a nagging customer who has been misled by a competitor. Given that that this kind of thing is likely to happen many of the times, I think it's important to focus on what is your messaging, right? So whenever you're dealing with a customer, we have to be sure what message you're sending. and whether it is being packaged and sent in the right format. There will always be negative feedback. I don't think we can run away from negative feedback. For example, in our company, we know that every patient who has been discharged from a hospital, can we call them and get feedback? And about 85 to 90% of the patients are always happy. They're not complaining. There will be 10% who have some issue, or they are not satisfied with service. Irrespective whether it was triggered by a competitor or because the customer themselves felt that there is an issue. I think there are two things that one is obviously fix the issue which is creating the trouble, but most importantly, I think the opportunity for a customer, opportunity for you to fix the problem for the customer once he complains also is a great way to the customer better. It is, I think, well known that who complain gets a better service is an engaged customer. So in your case, probably you want to engage the customer and figure out what are the pain points and fix those and then go back to them.
Mr. Kapil, he asks, while being an IT professional and start working on an idea, should one prefer moonlighting, that is, work and run startup in parallel, or quit the job, approach a VC directly and start, or to be a part of a incubation or vertical accelerators? What are the pros and cons of these three options?
Can you repeat the last part of it?
He says whether one can become approached to a VC directly and start. Second option is a part of incubation centers, and third, vertical accelerators. So what are the pros and cons of these three options?
Right. So let me start with with a slightly broader take on how you will start off the business and how do you fund it. The initial phase of the company will be just you and maybe a couple of your contacts or friends. So it will be largely funded by yourself or your family or your savings. The next stage of your organization, and not every organization has to go through this phase, but this is generally the process. The next phase is largely going to be money which is either from friends or family, which is allowing you to show the proof of concept. Only then you can go to sort of seed type of investors. So there is a process in which you can raise money. So I think at the idea stage, approaching the VC might not necessarily be the best opportunity. Coming back to incubators and accelerators, yes, they are great opportunities. I think if you have a good idea and get accepted into an accelerator and incubator, it's a great way to get feedback for your business, do a proof of concept, and then approach investors. So the first question of whether you should continue to work on the idea part-time or do it full-time, my suggestion would be that I think most of the entrepreneurs work on their ideas while they are employed by somebody else. So this is some problem that they want to solve. But once you have decided to convert this idea into a company, I think it doesn't make sense to have your foot in both places. I think it might be best to move on and start your company, keeping your own personal situation in mind. If you are financially independent, little bit of saving to sustain, I think it might be best to do it full time. And if you can get into an incubator or accelerator, that's even better.
The next question is from Mr. Vimal. He asks three questions in order. Number one, how to start up with minimal overheads like company secretary, lawyers, HR, etc. Number two, importance of market research after idea inception and before execution. And number 3, any government support?
Yeah, I think the first question is very important. I think you have to keep your overheads very low in the initial stages. So many of startup ecosystem players, whether it is your story or you know, plugged in or any of these organizations can point you towards company secretary and chartered accountants who work with very early stage companies who are really not very expensive, but I think it's critical investment that you have to make in the initial stages. So it's very important to talk to people who have already set up their companies, maybe 1 or 2 years down the line, and identify those resources. Your local TI chapter can also help you in identifying these organizations. Many of the company secretary and chartered accountants also do this out of their own interest to support the startup so that when they grow they can provide full services. So you might be able to negotiate a good rate on that. The question about government support, I think there are limited opportunities in terms of government support, but if you have heard recently, there is a fund which is created by the government of India under the aegis of the National Innovation Council. So if your idea happens to be in the area of innovation and whether it is a product or a service, you can potentially qualify for funding anywhere from 20 lakhs to 2 crores. So that is one area that you can explore. There are also other opportunities like Technology Development Board, which is a Government of India enterprise, where there will be where there are grants given if you can go with a proof of concept. So there are multiple opportunities, not very extensive, but depending on your field, you can probably look at those opportunities. Coming back to your market research, I think it's important to do a assessment of the market once you have an idea and put it in place. But also sometimes I have seen that not relying too much, you should not rely too much on the data that you get, because some of the products and services that you might create are not necessarily comfortable, or the customer doesn't know that, that this will be useful to you. So for example, the classic case obviously is the iPhone or iPad, where there has been there is a famous story that Steve Jobs did not want to use customer feedback because he did not know what the customer would want. But by and large, I think going and validating your idea with the market at a small level might be helpful, but not spending too much effort and money on market research.
Ms. Runa, she asks, hiring at the initial period, what should we look for, talent or loyalty?
That's a very good question actually, and I would say in the initial stages there are two things you should look for. Passion. Somebody has the passion towards your business. They should really be excited about working in the developing product, being in the industry that you are focusing on. I think that is very critical. The second thing is that they should be the type of people who can get things done. It's very important because you don't have the resources at the very early stage. You don't want people to be thinking about things for a long time. You want people to go out and get things done, because unless you get things done, there will be no proof. So passion and getting things done is very important. I think talent is a very broad term, and I would say getting things done is also a talent, but you don't necessarily have to have experts at the early stage. And about loyalty, I have a different opinion. I think loyalty, whether to the individual or organization, not as important, is aligned with the mission. As long as you are aligned with the mission of the organization, you are loyal to the cause, that is okay.
because they don't contribute anything, but we are still answerable to them. So shall we opt for angel investors or not?
Sorry, they don't contribute anything?
Contribute anything,
Can you repeat the question?
but yeah, should we go for angel investors because they do not contribute anything, but we are still answerable to them? So shall we opt for angel investors or not?
No, angel investors, I think, have a very critical role to play. And just to clarify, they do bring in some money. So it helps you go from stage 1 to stage 2 very early in your career. So that money is very critical. The second thing that the angel investors also bring, if you have right investors, they will also bring some amount of rigor into your business. They will, ask you some questions. You are in a way accountable to them, so you will make sure that the plan is executed. So a good angel investor will also have connections within the industry, and if required, when you are ready for venture capital funding, having a good investor, good angel investor helps, who can open doors at various VC companies. So I think we have been very fortunate to have angel investors, and we have benefited from it very greatly. And I would highly recommend that you have a angel investor who preferably is from your own industry and who's slightly senior and who understands the larger picture and can give you sort of unbiased feedback. So in that, I would say that it's an important role, and I would highly encourage that.
Our next question is from Ritvik. Asks, how do you raise funding for a social venture when you do not get to show options profits to your investors? You wanted to provide affordable healthcare. How did you convince your investors?
Yeah, so that's also a good question, and I think it's a question that we need to answer in two ways. One is, what is the social impact that you are creating, and what is the potential financial returns? So I think there has to be a balance between both of these. So financial returns with no social impact, or social impact with no financial returns, neither of them will be able to attract the right kind of investors. Fortunately, over the last 5 years, there is a whole range of investment available exclusively for socially relevant businesses, but that does not mean that they will ignore the financial part. I think it's very important to show that you have customers, you are able to create a market, even though you might not be making super profits, but at least there is somebody willing to pay for your services and product. And as you grow the business, you will be able to get to a reasonable amount of returns, and that's what is important. I think it's very important also to establish what are the metrics that you will use, whether on the social impact side or on the financial return side, and be very open and transparent with your potential investors.
The next question is from Ashutosh. He says he runs an online startup which is an e-commerce website. Are there any legal issues related to this startup?
On the legal front, Ashutosh, I might not be able to answer this question directly. My recommendation would be to speak to your local Thai chapter and ask them to connect you with somebody who is already running a company in e-commerce, because I believe there are rules which are changing fairly frequently, and I might not have the latest update. But there are people, maybe in the NEN network, who can guide you on this specific issue.
Okay. Next question is from Kanchan. She says, what is the right time to jump over from a startup to another if there exist no problems in the current startup?
What is the right time to jump from one startup to another?
If
Is that
there
the question?
exists, yeah, if there is no problem with the existing one.
Yeah, I think that really depends on what you want to do. There are many people who thrive in a startup like of type of environment and really are get bored when the company is stabilizing. So if you are one of those persons, I don't see no reason why you should not decide to move from one startup to another. But I think there is a great advantage if you can be in a startup in the entire phase, from the startup stage to the growth phase, because the learning on how you started as 3 or 4 people and sort of had to do everything, then you grew to a stage where there were 50, 100 people and built an organization. That satisfaction will be and the learning will be important as you go to the next startup. So I would recommend against jumping from startup to startup very frequently, but if you're the kind of person who gets excited by these type of ideas, I think as long as you spend reasonable amount of time each company, I don't see any problem with that.
Uh, what is the best way for a non-technical person who wants to start a business based on a technical product? Whether he should go for partnership with a technical person, or outsourcing the product for some time, or approaching a VC with an idea. Please throw some light.
I think the last part is not feasible. Approaching a VC with an idea is not a good option. I think the other two options are reasonably good. One is get a partner or a co-founder who understands the technology so that they can bring that insight. Second is, if the technology is not too complicated and you are able to frame the business aspects fairly reasonably, going for an out technology provider might not be a bad idea. But I think in general, it helps to have the balance of business and product or technology person. So if you're just starting out, it might be worthwhile to have a co-founder who is on the technical side and you're on the business side, so you can address both issues as you are starting and growing the business.
This question is from Avnesh. For a startup on seed funding, what will be the percentage of share between investor and owner?
That's a very complicated question, and the short answer there is it really depends on the stage of the company, the type of customers or the traction that you have, and also largely on the negotiation that you have with the investors. And so there is no easy answer. I think the way to do it is to talk to somebody who's in the same field or same industry and get their advice, who have raised some money. And I know the numbers can be all over the place, but one suggestion I have to give and make sure that we are all aware of this is that just because you're taking money from somebody at the early stage doesn't necessarily mean that the person who gives the money has to have a majority or a large number of shares in your company. I think your idea and your effort is equally important, and in many cases more important than the money which comes in. So we should never be in the temptation to hand over a large part of the company to somebody else just because they are bringing in the money.
Our next question is from Prasad. He says, I have a good technical contacts and business circle who can help me in software related areas. Now I am interested to raise a startup but not able to confirm which type of startup should I start. I mean, is it be product based or service based? And how to plan further?
I think that that question really has to be addressed from what you are passionate about, whether you are passionate about products or services, and what is your technical capability. I think as long as you are fairly comfortable about the type of business you want to be in, whether it is product or service, then you'll have to identify the market. I think just focusing on the marketing and figuring out which type of business you should do might be okay, but maybe not very exciting over the long period of time. So I think it really boils down to what you and your team are passionate about, and can you convert that into a business.
A last question is from Runa again. What should we keep in mind before we approach an investor?
So if you, there are multiple investors, so at the early stage it is your passion and commitment, I think, which is very, very important. At the angel investment side, they should be excited about your industry, the potential, and your commitment to it. But I think when you are approaching serious investors, I think there are only 3 questions that that need to be addressed. Right. So number 1 is how big is the opportunity? Are you targeting a large enough opportunity? If yes, what is it that you are doing differently? Whether you have a new technology, or you have a new way to approach this problem, or you have a new model. And the third question is, how will this business make money? I think these are the only 3 questions that really need to be addressed in your presentation. So I would start with a general overview of the market and how big is it, and what is the market for what you are trying to do, and how different are you from others, what is your unique proposition, and then how are you going to make money, and eventually the investor is going to make money. So this will be the broader sort of context in which you will pitch the VC. Approaching the VC itself is a little bit of an interesting challenge. I think just sending emails to various VCs will not help. It is also like a sales process. You have to build the pipeline, you have to approach all your contacts and see if they have anybody they can put you in touch with. And it's also very important to identify the right type of investor you want to talk to. If you're in the e-commerce space, probably people who are more active in the e-commerce side. If you're on the healthcare, maybe focus on investors who are looking at healthcare opportunity. Or if you're in the social business, can you look at social VCs? So it has to be a right approach, and also very targeted to make sure that you succeed in your early stages.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashwin, for that interesting session. Thank you all our attendees for participating in the webinar. We are glad that the questions kept coming, but due to lack of time, we are unable to answer all the questions. Please do send in your feedback and suggestions to us at eclub@nenglobal.org. Also, if you found this session interesting, feel free to blog or post about it. Join us for our next webinar on IPR and their role in today's life on May 29 at 3 p.m. Thank you once again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.